Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a powerful and fascinating chapter of South Asian history, the rise and decline of the Mughal Empire, a dynasty that once ruled one of the richest and most influential regions of the world. The story of the Mughal collapse is not the tale of a single event. It is the long unraveling of an empire that reached extraordinary heights before slipping into fragmentation, weakness, and finally disappearance. In this video, we're going to explore how this mighty empire moved from greatness to collapse, what mistakes shaped its downfall, and how internal and external forces together pushed it toward its final end. The Mughal Empire didn't begin as a weak or unstable kingdom. In fact, during the 16th and 17th centuries, it was one of the most powerful empires on the planet. Under rulers like Akbar, Jahangir, Shah Jahan, and the early years of Aurangzeb, India thrived as a global center of wealth, craftsmanship, trade, and culture. The empire stretched across vast regions, its administration was disciplined, its economy was flourishing, and its architecture, from glorious forts to magnificent palaces, reflected a civilization at its peak. The Mughals presided over a diverse population and created a political system that blended Persian influences with Indian traditions, setting the stage for a vibrant and multicultural society. But no empire lasts forever, and the early signs of stress within the Mughal system started gathering while it was still shining at its brightest. Beneath the surface of this glamour was a system struggling to contain its internal contradictions. Administrators often controlled regions that were too far away to manage effectively, nobles competed for influence, and local powers waited for their moment to rise. As long as strong emperors held the throne, these pressures stayed under control, but once the leadership weakened, everything started to fall apart faster than anyone could have imagined. Aurangzeb, the last truly powerful Mughal ruler, played a significant role in this turning point. Although he was talented, disciplined, and ambitious, many of his decisions unintentionally weakened the empire. He spent nearly 30 years of his reign engaged in exhausting military campaigns in the Deccan, trying to conquer territories that drained enormous resources. The empire's treasury, once overflowing, started to shrink under the weight of endless warfare. Soldiers grew tired, supplies grew scarce, and the administrative system became overstretched. An empire that had been well organized and financially stable began to show signs of strain. Alongside military overextension, Aurangzeb's religious policies also shifted the political landscape. His stricter approach marked a clear departure from Akbar's inclusive ideology, which had brought Rajputs, Hindus, and various religious groups into the heart of the Mughal system. As Aurangzeb introduced more rigid policies and reversed some earlier reforms, it damaged long-standing alliances. Communities that had once stood beside the Mughals began to feel alienated, eventually leading to uprisings and rebellions. The Rajputs, Jats, Sikhs, and especially the Marathas began resisting with increasing force, turning regions that had once been peaceful into costly battlegrounds. When Aurangzeb died in 1707, the stability he had maintained through sheer will collapsed almost immediately. His death opened the gates to a chaotic struggle for succession, something the Mughal system had always struggled with. Instead of a clear line of inheritance, princes fought each other for the throne, dragging powerful nobles into their personal conflicts. These internal wars shattered the unity of the empire and allowed regional leaders to gain power. Provinces that once sent taxes and troops to the central court suddenly realized that the emperor in Delhi no longer held real authority over them. What followed was a long line of weak, inexperienced, and easily manipulated rulers. Bahadur Shah I, Jahandar Shah, Farrukh Siyar, Muhammad Shah, Shah Alam Roman II, and finally Bahadur Shah Zafar. These emperors lacked the strength, vision, and leadership qualities that the empire desperately needed. They were often puppets in the hands of ambitious nobles, rival factions, or regional warlords. The Mughal court, once home to disciplined ministers and capable generals, turned into a playground for political conspiracies. Instead of governing the empire, rulers spent most of their time surviving palace plots, bribing courtiers, or fighting for their throne. As the center weakened, the provinces grew bold. Governors who once sent revenue to Delhi began withholding taxes, building their own armies, and acting like independent kings. Bengal, Awadh, Hyderabad, and other regions drifted away from Mughal authority, keeping the title of Mughal province, but no longer obeying the emperor. The unity of the empire fractured into pieces as local dynasties gained power. while the emperor became little more than a symbolic figure with limited influence. The enormous empire that once stretched across most of the subcontinent now shrank into a shadow of its former self. The most dramatic blow to Mughal prestige came in 1739 with the invasion of Nadir Shah of Persia. He marched into northern India, defeated the Mughal army with shocking ease, and entered Delhi almost unopposed. What followed was one of the most devastating episodes in the empire's history. Delhi was plundered, thousands were killed, and immense wealth, including the famous Peacock Throne and the Koh-i-Noor diamond, was taken away. This invasion shattered whatever was left of Mughal pride and exposed their extreme vulnerability. The world now saw that the Mughals were no longer the invincible force they once were. After Nadir Shah's invasion, the empire continued to crumble. The Marathas rose as the dominant power in the subcontinent, challenging Mughal authority in nearly every region. They occupied Delhi at various points, controlled important territories, and even protected some Mughal emperors just to maintain symbolic legitimacy. Meanwhile, the Sikhs in the northwest, the Jats around Agra, and the Rohillas in the Gangetic region established their own influence. The empire became a chessboard of competing regional forces, each expanding while the central authority struggled to survive. As if internal weakness and invasions were not enough, a new and decisive force began to rise, the British East India Company. At first, it was merely a trading company with limited territorial ambitions, but as Mughal authority declined, the company saw an opportunity to step into the political vacuum. Using diplomacy, manipulation, military power, and economic control, the British steadily expanded their influence. They defeated regional powers, forged alliances, and eventually became the most dominant force in India. The Mughals, unable to resist, slowly fell under British control. By the early 19th century, the Mughal emperor was no longer a ruler in any real sense. He lived in the Red Fort but had no authority beyond its walls. The British paid him a pension and used him as a ceremonial figurehead to give their rule legitimacy. The once great empire had shrunk to a mere courtyard. The dynasty that had commanded wealth, armies, and vast territories now survived only because the British allowed it to exist as a symbol. The final blow came in 1857 during the First War of Independence, often called the Sepoy Mutiny. Indian soldiers rose against British rule and, seeking a unifying symbol, declared the aging Bahadur Shah Zafar as their emperor. For a brief moment, it seemed like the Mughal name might rise again, but the rebellion failed, and its failure sealed the fate of the Mughal dynasty forever. The British exiled Bahadur Shah Zafar to Rangoon, where he died in 1862, far from his homeland, marking the absolute end of the Mughal line. So what really caused the decline of this great empire? The reasons are many, but they include military overreach, economic exhaustion, declining leadership, factionalism among nobles, regional resistance, invasions from foreign powers, and finally, emergence of European colonial dominance. The Mughal collapse was not a sudden fall but a gradual disintegration, a slow unraveling that took more than a century. Each generation witnessed the empire becoming weaker, smaller, and more dependent until it eventually disappeared from the political map. The story of the Mughal decline teaches us several important lessons. Even the greatest empires can fall when leadership becomes weak, when internal unity collapses, and when the state fails to adapt to changing realities. Empires survive not only on military strength, but on diplomacy, inclusion, loyalty, and financial stability. The Mughals lost the balance that once made them powerful, and by the time they realized it, their rivals, both Indian and European, had already grown too strong. Today, the Mughals live on not through political power, but through their cultural and architectural legacy. Their awareness palaces, gardens, poetry, cuisine, and grand monuments still stand as reminders of a civilization that once reached magnificent heights. But their political downfall remains one of the most dramatic examples in world history of how great powers can dissolve slowly and painfully. And that wraps up our deep dive into the decline of the Mughal Empire. If you enjoyed this detailed explanation and would like more historical breakdowns like this one, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.